Well, I'll take one step back because there was a moment that started to change this trajectory for me that I tell pretty much in every one of these kinds of a conversation I have about my past, which was I did pick up a book in the airport. Not many life-changing moments start with a book, and it's not just the book, but this book that I picked up randomly called Positive Intelligence back in 2012 when it was a number one New York Times bestseller for 2 years straight. I thought was just going to be another good read as somebody that's kind of sincerely curious about how to maximize human performance, and it's the neuroscience and positive psychology research of how all of us could be better, how all of us are doing things on a routine basis when we're amidst stress and adversity that are getting in our own way. And I read it and I recognized it was speaking to me like right into the gut, right? And through two things that had bothered me and afflicted me since I was a young kid in my earliest memories of life, like Little League baseball time. And I had the audacity to reach out to the author and struck up a friendship with him off of a cold call when he was lecturing at Stanford and running the largest executive coach training company in the world back then called CTI. And that friendship with that author on the back of picking up this book randomly in the airport led to going through his coaching immersions that he did, which, was amazing. And then there was a 7-year period where I got coached by a guy I would have never been able to afford because I was a mentee at that point. And that on the back of his very introspective framework, all of that was helping me see that basically as I was marking off the check boxes that this path lays out for me, which was promotions and money and awards and all of those things, and all really good and all things I was enjoying. I realized that the enjoyment of them became shorter and shorter and shorter. Like the moment, when I first started making money, I think it was a longer tail. But then, like to the next bump or to the next promotion or to the next accolade, those moments just became more and more temporary. And then I would immediately descend back down to baseline levels of happiness, fulfillment, significance, and self-worth. And that I started because of the introspective process I was in, instead of just being heads down tunnel vision like I was just a few years prior. I was reflecting on why do I feel that way? And that started this path of deep exploration to your question of, well, am I in the right path? Right? Just because I'm maybe quote unquote having success, is this the right path for me? Maybe it's not.
Yeah. It's interesting how similar it sounds when you're climbing the ladder and hitting each of these bogeys and these goals, and each one you need more quicker. It sounds like people that are addicted to drugs
Yeah.
often define. A heroin addict says that the first time I ever felt it, I've never felt anything like it again. And I chased that over and over and over again. And I've talked to lots of people that have been addicted over the years and overcome it. And it's amazing how the rat race, if you will, can become the same kind of addiction where that 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 goal of having the trophy of winning in the room, and you're only as big as the room you're in, and then all of a sudden you realize you're not that big, and you're like, oh well, there's a whole nother level, and now I can move my goals, and it really does change that perspective. And it's so interesting to me. One other point I'll make, and I'll let you comment on that, but I too read a book. I was a financial advisor, and I was probably like 6 years in, and I was growing every year by 20-30%, and my business was getting good. I was finally starting to make some decent money, and I read a book on the industry, and it was completely different than all my training, completely different. It was all relationship driven. It was how I was as a human, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm changing everything. And so I picked up the phone and called the author and struck up a multi-year mentorship where we built out programs and processes and developed this great friendship over the years. And I remember actually writing checks for a huge amount to just get started and thinking, am I doing the right thing? And it
Yeah.
turned out to be one of the greatest moments and pivots in my career, because it had me working towards bigger things. It wasn't just about a goal within the company I was in the next bogey, those started to mean less and less to me. Whether I was getting the next ribbon or whatever the level up was, it didn't matter. It was, am I aiming for? I have a friend who calls it their North Star. Was I focused on the North
Yeah.
Star for my life?
Yeah.
Those are really powerful moments. They seem obscure and small, but they are big. You picked up a book in an airport, you read the
Yeah.
book, you called the author, you started up a long mentorship, and it's changed your life. And whether it's that one moment or all those moments mixed together, it's still pretty damn powerful.
It is. That's so funny that you have a similar story. And yeah, I mean, it's, that's what I mean. It's not one moment, right? I mean, it was a patient perspective building path that gradually has continued to unveil itself. And as time's gone on, I've gotten better about trusting these types of, introspective journeys that sometimes you just stumble into. And, you got to wonder, right back to your faith, where, why do things show up at certain times? And then, do we enough of these times when something randomly pops into our life? Do we jump on it? Do we walk through the door? I think we miss a lot of them, quite frankly. I think we miss a lot of doors that we should walk through. I think we miss investing in relationships. I think it's an X factor that becomes more important in today's day than probably ever in this digital, right, disruption world that we live in. That getting back to some of that old school stuff that you would have done when life was slower, and it was a different time, and you would have just stayed more open-minded and more curious and more deliberate about, people and relationships and experiences. Sometimes those lead you down paths that help you figure it out, because you can't think hard about this stuff. That's the thing. People are always like, I catch a lot of people in transition. We support in our executive community a lot of folks when they're in a state of transition. That's when people tend to look for communities and networks to support them. And the problem is that when we really feel like we need to figure it out is when we're typically going to struggle the hardest. Because when you feel pressure and stress and timelines and all that, and you're like, I'm writing things down and I'm trying to figure this out, I need to figure it out by X date. That's not how the brain works. That's not where vision and creativity and innovation live. They live in white space. They live in pressure-free environments. They live because we dot connect on the words that we hear and see around us just by being in different rooms. To your point, always my main advice to people when if you're not feeling fully fulfilled or possibly questioning the lane that you're in, is make sure you spend time, to your point, outside of your day job, just doing things that interest you, just doing things that inspire you, that bring you joy, that feel like you're stretching yourself. Trust those things, invest in them, be patient with them, because a lot of times they will eventually guide you down to the bigger decisions that eventually you would make and feel confident about.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful when you think about slowing down to speed up. It's one of those things I've talked about a lot of times because I'm a sprinter
Yeah,
and I've lived my life sprinting. And guess what? You miss a lot of opportunities when you're sprinting. It's like speeding on the highway. You
right.
can't be speeding on the highway and then catch the best exit to go have dinner or lunch if you're just flying down, not paying attention to what's coming up ahead.
Yeah,
But if you slow down, kind of pull up Waze or Google Maps and you take a look and someone's in the car and you have a conversation, you can find some real gems. And
that's right.
life is a lot like that. You take these moments and you realize that maybe I'm sprinting too fast. Maybe I need to slow down so I can actually open myself up to think through it. And then to your point on life in transition and how hard it is interesting. It's like what drives you to go to the gym. When
Yeah,
someone is not working out and they get out of the shower and they look at themselves and they don't like what they see. And or maybe one of their kids says something to them and they're like, "Hey, dad, mom, what are you
yeah,
doing? Are you all right?" Like, kids will say the darndest things to you.
yeah,
And I'm in like some of the best shape of my life right now. My boys still tell me that I'm fat.
yeah,
So they're 16 and 19 and they're cut and they're ripped and I love it. I think it's great because we're just busting on each other. But
yeah.
I still, at the end of the day, there's something that drives you for change. But when you make that decision, it's usually the hardest time to make that decision. And then the first couple workouts are the most painful They're the ones where you don't even think you can get through it. If
Yeah.
you're actually pushing yourself, you're pushing yourself at a point. I started a new workout 12, 15 weeks ago, and I do legs, but I haven't done legs like this in a long time. I
Yeah.
mean, week one was two workouts of legs. By the second workout, I hadn't even gotten healed from the first one. And I was like, how am I going to do 15 weeks of this? Like, I'm never going to make it through. I'm already thinking about how I'm not going to make it. Right.
Yeah.
And instead, week 2 was a little easier. Week 3 was a little easier. I still hated it in week 4 and 5, but I started to recognize what was happening, and the return was quicker. The
Yeah.
healing was quicker. The breakthroughs were quicker. You know,
Yeah.
so it's so relative to what you're saying. It's such a powerful point that when we're going through those moments, it's when it's the most challenging, but it's also kind of the what we need to maybe see that we need to make that change.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be patient. You've got to be willing to just stick with things too, you know? I think today's day, the hardest part is that nobody wants to stick with anything because that's the way we're living. We're scrolling, right? And that's how people are living. People are living like they scroll, just to the next thing, to the next shiny object, to the next person, to the next event, to the next day. And there's, this is not shiny anymore. Like sticking with things, going through the long, slow burn that then turns into something that brings you a lot of joy because now it's a lot easier, or it is something that you've decided that you really enjoy doing. That's a big part of, I think, a lot of the figuring it out part as well. Don't just find some things that you think could be majorly impactful. Get around smart people that have done it or helped others do it. Invest in those relationships, invest in yourself, and stick with it.
If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.